Good morning, friends. OBE Journal 2017, Part 4. And it's, just before 5 in the morning. And we'll just continue on um, with just in the last couple of hours. Moving on from night number 1. Obviously, I had to skip night number 2 because I spent so long talking about night number 1. And that's seeming to be inevitable at this point. But given the understanding that I'm trying to portray that we are out there every night, and I say this especially to those of you that are having experiences once in a while and wondering what's maybe going on in the 3 weeks or the month or whatever between one vivid experience and the next. And there are things going on. You just don't always remember. And explains why in various accounts, which have been read by me in the series After Average Folks in the Afterlife, where people will be encountering projected experimenters will be encountering various astral beings who will say, in Bruce Moen, for example, there's many others, oh, you've been here before, or you come here often, and they don't remember. And that's why. You don't always take your consciousness with you, or not the full level of consciousness, or the consciousness that comes back to the physical plane and is there with you. You don't always access that for a variety of reasons, which I've gone through before. And this is an attempt to portray not continuous consciousness, but we'll work toward that. Certainly, it's something that you'll hear the Ascended Masters talk about in their various dialogues, in various books that have been channeled through them, or by disciples of their consciousness. Alice Bailey being one example, but there are others. And let me say this: don't forget that part of you is always projected. Even if you feel that, oh yeah, I'm just hovering above my physical body, the astral body hovers above the physical in order to get the astral vibrations and be nourished by them. Once you're out of the physical body, you are in at least the lower levels of the astral plane. And you'll see accounts of this in many places. Many people do that and don't ever get beyond that. Some of them might kind of, whiz around their bedroom a little bit, sit on the bed, look out the window. And that is also a place where the unadventurous will meet their more keener, dearly beloveds who have passed. They will come to your bedroom and sit there and talk to you. And you will vaguely remember it the next morning. Or not remember it at all. So, as I was saying, part of you is always projected. Bit of a theme for tonight. Think of it as another aspect of higher self that is always there, that has projected part of its consciousness, its monadic consciousness, down through the planes to become a fetus and then become a human being. I've covered that in detail in the book You Are History, as have others. And also recall in the many past life regression books, where someone at some point will announce, whether it's an experiencer or a teacher or one of those folks that gives you advice or it conducts your life review, will remind you that not all of your consciousness comes to Earth. And what's the current state of understanding of that? Young souls tend to take somewhere between 60 and 70% of their consciousness to Earth, of their spiritual consciousness, to help them through the difficulties and challenges. Whereas older souls who have gained inner experience through more past lives tend to take less, 10 to 15%, for a variety of reasons, one of which is the challenge, another of which is you just don't need it after a while because you've got a kind of a telepathic contact, whereas younger souls lose that telepathic contact with their spiritual self and need more of it there with them. So anyway, part of you is always over there. And whether, how big that part is or what form it takes or what it does or what it doesn't do is a matter for further exploration, not just by me, but by everybody. And includes the intriguing notion that when you pass, you might actually meet yourself when you're there. And what's that spiritual self going to look like? Is it going to be part of higher self? Is it going to be a being walking around? It's many things can happen. And don't be put off by the vagueness here. Vagueness and diversity and choice and multiple options, multiple non-linear options are what the spirit world's all about. And it can be an amazingly confusing place. But you will rise to the challenge, and you will meet that. For example, like in Robert Monroe's classic trilogy, the guides that he has that are called inspecs, and that he calls them that after a while. And after a longest while, maybe part 3, I forget exactly when, they turn out to be part of him. He goes, oh, those inspecs are part of me. It's me guiding myself. And it was quite startling at the time when I read that, 30 years ago. And, we tend to think of spirit guides as, discrete entities, which they can be. They can be discrete entities, independently operating, and they can also be part of you, that are, part of the team, as it were. So there's always that duality. There's always that either or, both and kind of thing. And another little challenge, of which there are many, amusing challenges, I might add. So the projected state, you're always projected. Another thing to remember is there's always something going on. Whatever you can imagine, whatever crazy, surreal, nutty, miraculously transcendental thing, event, series of events, occurrences, performances that you can imagine are going on or is going on somewhere in the spirit worlds right now. And that's because all possibilities are available there. There's nothing to hold back a grand adventure or a great experiment, because nothing requires money. It requires more imagination and determined imagination to bring something into manifestation. The same determined imagination that the devas put together when they're putting together a physical planet. Now that's another story, but it's the same determined imagination. And we can get into that another time. But understand that landscapes are created, and on a willful basis, on a willful imaginative basis, by usually angelic beings that are generally referred to as devas. But there's only some landscape devas. Other devas do other things. And the same with the astral landscapes that you so love that you visit. They've all been created quite consciously, maybe thousands of years ago, but they're there, and they get modified as people come and go and go, nice to have a palm tree over there next to that oak. That sort of a thing. You wouldn't normally see palm trees next to oaks, but you do on the astral plane. So part of you is always projected. There's always something of wildly imaginative interest going on somewhere. So it's not a matter of what'll I do now that I'm projected. It's more a matter of what'll I limit myself to while I'm here. And in the last couple of hours, I'm going to try and go through a number of little experiences that this fellow Gordon had while he was out. And now that I'm back, I can, you know, give you the spiel. So dark as I may look, I'm here. It's interesting how my hand's bright. Maybe I should see. I'm definitely here. And here we go then. Fairly instantaneous projection. It's a long while since I've, stumbled and buzzed about trying to sort of get my focus right. Don't ask me why. Don't like to brag about it. It just happens. Even 20 years ago, I'd be reading accounts of people having great trouble sort of, getting through the vibrationary stage and into their spirit bodies and moving along and then wondering what to do and then getting scared and coming back or too excited and coming back. I kept thinking I should have that experience. And I did, like 35 years ago. But more recently, no, I sort of just whiz out and I'm gone. And my spirit body would have great fun teasing me because I'd be trying to track my exits. And sort of, okay, here we go, here's the spirit body, worming its way out or rising up out of the physical. This would be at 1 a.m. or whatever, And I could rarely catch it. It would just whiz right by me like a butterfly kind of whipping away, or, some little nocturnal animal whipping by you, and you could barely see it as you're walking or anything like that. It was very much like that, and it seemed to take. The more I tuned into my spirit body traveling, the more I tuned in to this notion of it was teasing me. You can't catch me. Kind of like that, which had me baffled for the longest time. Anyway, I'm out there, and I'm out there quickly, and I've whizzed through the levels and up through the sky, and then you change dimensions, and you're in the lower astral, then you're middle astral. It's it's quick sometimes. It's really quick. So where did I go? Okay, I was out there. I live in the urban area of Toronto, the Greater Toronto Area, the GTA, and we have all modern cities, many tall buildings. And we have one called the CN Tower that's quite famous. And people, pay money to go up to the top and look out and go, ooh and ah. Well, there's another way of going up to the top of the CN Tower and sitting on it, and that's by flying astrally. And look, there's always people there every night. They'll be sitting there dangling their feet over the edge chatting. And I was there a while ago, and I was joined a few people that were there, and in various levels of consciousness, and just kind of socialized the way that you might just walk down the street and sit on just I see people sitting on the walls and benches outside the Tim Hortons, and half a mile away. Some of them have got motorcycles, some of them got cars, some of them got babies and strollers. They're just sitting there having a coffee or an ice cream, sitting there chatting on a summer's evening. It's much the same at the top of the CN Tower. There's always projectors out there, and there are various levels of consciousness. And some are fairly good, know what they're doing, have already done some acrobatics, gone down to New Orleans for a minute and a half and come back, gone up to the Arctic, had a look at some ice floes, come back there. And some people are they're more at the stage of, well, I made it out of the bedroom, and I'm downtown now, and they've gone out of their neighborhood, and they might have spent months floating around their own neighborhood, and then the big adventure is, oh, there's CN Tower, I wonder if there's anybody there. And there is. They go and they hang out, they just sit and talk, and about the very average things. Now, some people will make plans to do, let's explore some more, and they're looking to meet people that have explored some more and can give them tips. And that's somebody like me, but I don't always, reveal that. And you kind of judge what people are, ready to handle. And some people are just thrilled to, be out there and up and making the progress that they've already made. And so there's a variety of consciousnesses out there. And some of it's just plain friendliness, The same way that sitting down on a warm evening, having the ice cream outside the coffee shop, just that plain neighborliness, and just downtime, relax time, socializing. And out of body is much the same. A little more jokey, a little more, giddy. I mean, you're sitting on top of the CN for God's sakes, looking out over the city and the lake, beautiful lake, and up into the sky. And some people will wonder what it's like to go up into the sky, and some people will actually do it. You can go to the moon. Anybody can go to the moon. I've done it many times, as have other projectors. There's not a lot going on there, but there is a combined alien Earth base, been there for the longest while. And that should be no news to you. Many people have spoken of it. You can't get in, they won't let you in. There's a kind of an energy shield around it. They'll let you sort of perch a few hundred yards away and look at it. And various, I wouldn't say robotic beings, they're more like a little orb that's, I mean, you might even be there as an orb yourself. That's another thing you can do, travel as an orb. A lot of people, most people go in the astral body that looks like their physical body, slightly modified perhaps, but more or less them. And you can travel as an orb too. It's not a huge deal. That's why we photograph orbs of the spirit bodies of various sentient beings, including your deceased pets, by the way. But that's, what orbs actually are is another whole story, but I'll just hint at that for now. And you can travel as an orb. And even if you go to the moon as an orb, you and a couple of friends, and sit there and watch, you'll sense the psychic shield. There's all kind of stuff you can sense when you're out there. And it's just like a military building or, any kind of facility run by secret government departments, of which there are many. And you're just not going in. And don't even try. What's going on inside is mainly bureaucratic boredom anyway. But you'll be curious, and you just won't get in. Believe me, and it's not worth even trying. And respect their privacy. You wouldn't go into a neighbor's house unless you were some kind of sleazeball and watch them making love or look lustfully at these innocent little children. You wouldn't do that. Well, all I'm saying is respect the military and the intelligence services, their privacy. Even if what they're doing is not above board, is not what you would consider model behavior, they're entitled to create their experience and learn from it, and also experience the karma from that experience. They're fully entitled to that. And even if you don't approve of what they're doing, it doesn't really matter. Let's say you're out floating around and you come across, out in the countryside of the physical plane, and you're floating around as a ghost, which lots of you do, and you come across a biker clubhouse, and they're up to no good inside that clubhouse. Just leave them alone. It doesn't matter. All the souls that are there of their own volition, even the ones that seem a little on the innocent side. So cut them that same slack, and understand that they're doing what they're doing, and they're going to get the full dose of karma if it's nefarious activity, somewhere down the line. They're going to get the karma, not you. So you'll get the karma of curiosity, of course, but that's what we're like as we explore. We're curious. And so out there, you can be projected. I've not taken anybody from the GTA sitting on top of the CN Tower up to the moon. I've joked around with people about it to feel them out and see what they're up, what adventure they're up for, and usually they just want to talk about it. In kind of the same way that people might talk about science fiction movies, the glorious possibilities revealed in science fiction movies. The Star Wars kind of game. And but nobody really wants to actually do it. Not that I've come across anyway. And the people that do go to the moon are more private. They're more circumspect. They realize the sort of low interest level for most people, for most souls of doing that sort of thing. But just to emphasize, you can do it. And it's, quite a number of souls have done that. When I first did it and talked about it, on a radio show that I was on, I don't know, 20 years ago, whatever. Um, Within a week, I'd read accounts by other, slightly more famous people, the people that had been, and some of the people that had been in the CIA's, what was it called, Stargate program, have I got that right? The remote viewing one. A couple of them said that they had viewed the base on the moon, So I realized it wasn't such a big secret after all. But what's going on there? Well, your guess is as good as mine. Abduction stuff, probably. Manipulating DNA to create new life forms, yes. Why not? It goes on everywhere. All that medical experimentation stuff and, fiddling about with consciousness, trying to understand it. And, the various, how shall I put it, scientifically and medically educated personnel that work for the intelligence agencies, and there's a variety of them, of course, they're interested in this stuff. And they're very interested, and the jobs are good, well paid, and hey, they get to go to the moon every once in a while. And even Mars, there's a base on Mars, of course. Many whistleblowers have spoken about this over the years, Bob Dean being one of them, only one of them, there's many others. That's B-O-B-E, Bob Dean, D-E-A-N. You can Google that, and you'll find all kinds of interviews with Uncle Bob chatting away about that sort of thing. The portals in the underground Air Force bases. You go down an elevator, go down a hallway, walk through a door, go to the other side of the door, and you're on Mars. It's that simple. And I was intrigued when I first heard that because there's an effortless simplicity about those portals that's very like telepathic interchange or the automatic bilocation of your mental body when you travel. I say automatic bilocation because in the astral body you tend to whiz places. Things are whizzing by you, like you whizzed from Toronto to Paris, or you're whizzing over the Atlantic. Next thing you know, you're over Britain, and maybe you're going to Paris, or you're going to Copenhagen, or wherever you're going, the Alps for a bit of a ski. There's that sense of shit passing. But in the mental body, there's more. You can do this instantaneous transfer where suddenly you're there. There's nothing whizzing by you. It's not we're not high speed here. We're going here, there. And I learned that on my earlier projection. I picked up something from William Buhlman, the noted explorer, and from his first or second book, and he talks about being out and things being a bit fuzzy and visually fuzzling. You can't quite get focused, and he developed this command called clarity now. And during the Iraq War, when I was practicing retrieval work and exploration, I realized I was always dependent on guides, and I thought guides had to help you along with all this stuff, and they would be sort of saying, "Oh no, Gordon, you can do this by yourself. We've got other things to do." They'd be holding clipboards and acting like they were busy, and finally they just left me alone and wouldn't tell me anything. And I thought about William Buhlman's clarity now, fizzing around here in the astral space around here in Canada, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll just do Iraq now, and I did. I gave this command, Iraq now, and I was there. So these little tips that you can use. And then I did some of the retrieval work that I thought should be done. It was in the middle of the Iraq War. There was lots of stuff going on, just as there is now in all the other civil wars that are going on, as I talked about last night. So, top of the CNTR, chatting with people. And people come and go, and they say, oh, I think I'll go back to my body now. Time for a little rest. And other people meet up. It's a bit like a bit of a social club, a bit of a dating club. A lot of that goes on. People go out of body and they're feeling kind of keen to exit their humdrum lives, and they hook up with lovers, and they go off for whatever the half an hour or what, and they interact sensually, sexually, uh, gay and straight, all the variations, and come back to their bodies, later in the night, early in the morning, and know they've done it, but as they, it's like everyone else with their out-of-body experience. You go back into the body, the physical sleeping body, and you lose a lot of the memory part. And the memory there's, oh honey, I had the sexiest dream, or they talk that way, or they don't talk at all because they feel guilty about cheating on their partner, or they think the dream's cheating, and there's all those areas of activity that are forgotten or covered up because of embarrassment or shame. But I can assure you it does happen a lot. And there's no point taking a moral stance on it as far as I can tell. People do what they need to do to explore themselves and explore the possibilities of life and consciousness, and that's just one of them. And I would say that if you go to the lower astral, and sitting on top of the CN Tower is not the lower astral. You're sort of being in a spirit body on the physical plane. But on the lower astral, where a lot of sexual activity goes on, because of the low vibrations of lust. Lust is not a very high vibration. And there's a way of looking at things where you see activities of a lower vibration and activities of a higher vibration and activities of an even higher vibration. And then as you proceed on your journey and you get more abstracted from all this activity, you can sort of drop that notion of lower and higher and see it as all one. And that is metaphysically appropriate. But you still need the understanding that I'm going to give you right now, that if you go to these places out of desire, excitement, lust, whatever, curiosity, and you get involved in the sexual activity, there'd be like nightclubs, and there's gambling, and there's music, and there's drinking, and there's the usual kind of stuff, and there's places where you can go and get laid, right? I mean, it's common enough, and there's quite a lot of that goes on, and there's people that are dead that are there. Most of them are dead. You're projected. And they're continuing on a lifestyle. They might have worked in a brothel, they might have worked in human trafficking, they might have been escorts, they might have been gamblers, they might have been boozers, all these things. And there's people still being trafficked there, because I wrote about that which novel was that? I wrote about trafficked people in the lower astral plane in a novel that's not published yet. We'll get it out one of these days. I was hoping somebody would publish it for me. But anyway, that's a low level of consciousness. They just think that that's what the lifestyle they have to continue with. And but so you can go there, but what happens is you bring a kind of a fresh meat energy to the place. And if you can hook up with people and they really like you. I mean, they like being with you, they like partying with you. They think, oh God, he's cute. And it might even be more than one. A couple, 2 or 3 women will glom onto you. And not instantaneously perhaps, but they will. And they're like your little love mates, your little lovebirds. And you've got a fresher, higher energy than they do, because they live in that level all the time. They're like little playful sex kittens, that's kind of what they're like. At least for, I guess I'm talking like a heterosexual man here, but I'm also talking about clients that have contacted me after they've had these experiences, and guess what? They cannot get rid of these astral beings. They're, fully dead people. They're astral beings. They're humans. They're not, ghouls, or they're not, elementals pretending to be. They're dead human beings. But they're hooked into a sort of pleasure, sexual vibe of where they live on the astral plane, and you've got a better energy, so they follow you back, like cats and dogs following the master, and you don't realize you're the master though, and they come back to your physical plane life, and they can really be a problem. And I've done work for people where they've got this experience, it's messing up their physical plane family life, and they need to get detached, and I do the energy work that's necessary to get that detachment done. So understand that this can happen. You go to these places on a regular basis and go, wow, this is a lot of fun. And I'm not saying it's not a lot of fun, If that's your pleasure, that's your pleasure. But there is consequences. So understand that. Um, so if you were coming to me for teachings, I'd tell you to check it out once or twice and then avoid it later. And of course, you may not wish to check it out. It may be abhorrent activity to you, and that's yeah, that's just as well. So no, I did talk about that, and going to the holiday resort, uh, as many people do. There's many of them on. I wouldn't say they're on the lower astral. They're on a higher level. They're on the pleasure levels, if you like, the paradise pleasure levels, and it's just another place to be, really. But as you know, as I said, there are consequences, and you should be aware of them. So back to the CN I was there just a little while ago, and I gracefully made my exit at some point, and I didn't, take anyone with me. Particularly, nobody seemed to be that interested. I was just another guy up there, and they, several of them had seen me before. I know, yeah, you're that guy from Oakville. I remember, and I just kind of floated out over the lake. I love floating out over the lake and looking up at the stars. And there's a lovely sort of what do you want to call it? Cosmic balance. I'm not really, sure how you would describe it. It's that sense of being sandwiched very comfortably between the vibrations of the water and all the accumulated vibrations of the beings in the water, and fish, of course, and the birds that are sleeping on the water. And I'm fairly close to shore, but way out there in the middle. Although I did go out in the middle eventually, and then looking up at the sky. It's really quite wonderful, and there's just a beautiful sense of stillness. Well, not on a stormy night, but fairly quiet last night, and just hanging there, just being there, a point of consciousness in this marvelous kind of two-sided landscape, sky above, sea below. Well, more or less sea. It's not salt water, but it's a big lake, so it functions as a sea. And you can hang there for the longest while, and I've done it many, many times. And you can tune into the elementals, the spirit beings of the air and the water, if you wish. There are many, and we can go into that another time because it's fairly detailed. And they are the spiritual embodiment of the vibrations of the air, the water, the upper atmosphere, the clouds. They work with all that sort of thing, and much has been written about them in the last few years, which again is something else we can get to in detail later. And so just this marvelous sense of just being a point of consciousness in a sea of consciousness, not quite the formless energy planes way beyond. That's much, much higher vibration, but still it's a reflection of that on a lower level of vibration. And I would encourage all of you to do that once in a while. It's just a meditation. You're just hanging there meditating, really absorbing it all while letting it pass through you. And but it is quite a wondrous experience. And as I'm there, I knew, obviously in this ongoing experiment and reportage, I knew I'd be bringing that back to sort of convey it to you. All this stuff has become quite conscious in the last little while. I knew I was preparing for this for, a month or so, and it will go on throughout the summer, as I'm not chained to a work schedule in the summer. And sleeping and waking and getting up in the middle of the night will be easier. It's a bit of a challenge right now because I'm working right at this very moment. Although today's Saturday, I'm not. But the first 3 episodes, I was doing what I did, grabbing breakfast, having a shower, rushing out the door. It was a busy little time. But not today. So there was that. Okay, here's what happened next. I remember now. Um, like many of explorers, and this has been discussed on in websites and books that and on Facebook groups that I belong to. People realize that they're out there taking classes on the astral plane, and then some of them go, "Oh yeah, I'm learning stuff when I'm there," and they'll talk about the meeting that they were at and what they learned, yada yada yada. And then some people go a little further. They go, "Oh wait a minute, I'm teaching a class." And so just to confirm all of that for you friends, it does happen, and it happens on a regular basis. And all of you are more experienced out there than your waking, thinking selves here imagine, because you're only getting a part of the experience in your brain. And I'm knowledgeable enough to say that all of you are doing more than you think you're doing. The consciousness over there is greater. It gets shrunken down here, and you think, even people have said to me, by email and whatnot recently, "Gordon, you really think I'm doing all of this?" And they're quite amazed. And I go, "Yeah, you are, because there's telltale signs. There's telltale signs. I've been working with this for 20, 30 years at least in this incarnation alone. Never mind, what I did in ancient Egypt and other places." And when I say I, obviously that's a very, vague concept. The I that was in ancient Egypt is not the same I that's here now. There's a relationship, spiritual relationship, and there's an exchange of energy, but it's not the same I. But there are telltale signs. So if you hear me or see me saying that to you, understand where I'm coming from on that. And so, okay, went from the lake. Okay, I'm in, and I've been doing these talks for the longest while. And I quite like talking to broad-minded liberal Christians, of which there are many these days, not the narrow-minded judgmental ones. But there's lots of broad-minded liberal Christians that think about their belief system, think about their prophet and what he teaches, think carefully about the state of the world and how they can make it in any way better, whether they gather money together and provide for refugees, as many church groups have, whether those refugees, no matter what their religion is, they just do it out of the goodness of their hearts. Those type of Christians. And there are many of them, many more than, it's always the narrow-minded bigots, idiots that make the news. The people are out there doing, and I'm almost crying when I talk about this, Jesus' work. They don't need a newspaper headline to do it. They just do it. And God bless them for doing it. Anyway, let me recover from that for a moment. I'm very attuned to the Christ and his message. And I believe it's one of the great things that we do on this planet. Anyway, I'm in a sort of a meeting room church of a church somewhere on the astral plane, and people that are well settled there and are enjoying their lives and understand what's going on, where they're coming from, where they're going to. Well, maybe not where they're going to, and have speakers in, just like churches on earth. And I'm one of the speakers, and I'm talking to them about, after being welcomed in, given a cup of tea or whatever, about interdimensional travel, which they don't do. They tend to stay on the paradise level that they live in, because let's face it, those paradise levels are wonderful. They're beautiful. They have all the amenities that you could possibly want as a cultured citizen of your afterlife communities. And one well understands why people would stay in the one area. Paradise is paradise, after all. And they're not really fully understanding of how reincarnation works, because it's not in the Bible that much. And they talk about possibilities, past lives, maybe. Were they with Jesus in Palestine? They work with the metaphors that they've grown up with. And So I talk to them about interdimensional travel, how to move through the planes, the different planes that there are, and what can be experienced and accomplished if you wish to do work. And they often like to hear about the social work that you can do on the lower astral planes, because they are good Christians with good-hearted intentions all around. And some of them actually do that already. They don't need me to tell them, but others haven't, and I talk about it. Retrieving lost souls in the lower realms, which you've heard me talk about, I'm sure you know about anyway. So you talk about that, and going to different levels of the spirit world where there are non-human beings living, people that aren't human, beings that aren't human. And there's lots of them. There's lots of spirit beings of various kinds, the kinds that you would be familiar with, the nature spirits, the sprites, the elves, the devas that are more like archangels, um, that sort of a thing. I've interacted with all those sorts of beings at various times, and beings of other cultures that don't have a particularly Christian view of things, and how they live on in their spirit worlds. Not that much different, but they need to hear about these sort of things. And I do little thought experiments while I'm talking to these people. Close your eyes and imagine this, and guided visualizations, and just almost very similar to what you would do here. And talk about projecting onto other planets, give them an understanding that the Earth-based science sees only the physical plane of other planets. That other planets in our system, Mars, Venus, whatever, have spirit levels on them, higher vibrating levels that are quite inhabitable and are inhabited. And so I talk about that. And you can find books on that. There's various people who have written books on that sort of a thing, traveling to other planets. And hey, guess what? It's not 4,000 degrees and so gaseous you're poisoned instantly. That's the physical plane. Upwards, it's different. And same with farther away, Sirius, Andromeda, yada yada yada. So all the different types of beings that there are, and there are many, and we are some of them. And we are always projected. Part of us is always projected. Understand that you're traveling with yourself to yourself, although it may not seem that way. Anyway, I think that's enough for tonight. OBE Journal Part 4, or was it? I think it's Part 4. See how abstracted I get? Maybe it's Part 5. Anyway, the right number will be on the YouTube listing. Trust me. And until we meet again, I bid you a fond farewell.